modeling.
Great. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thanks for accommodating the different start time than our usual 9 a.m. To allow for John Kostelnick to attend and share what his team has developed for you all. So yeah, this morning we're going to be going over all of the sort of deliverables that the Broadband Breakthrough team has worked to provide to you all at the end of the program, some of which you'll be familiar with, and some of which you might you've been introduced to at least, but will have your memory jogged in the next little over an hour. So we'll start with John Kostelnick, who will walk you through the two tools, agricultural analysis tools that his team has developed. I think all of the cost modeling reports are done for your county, but the vertical assets are not quite done. I won't speak for you, John. And then we'll move to Nancy, who will speak about the survey reports. And then the RCG team will discuss all the updates to the information that they've already provided to you in their Zoomable PDFs, and then some additional sort of static reports that you'll be getting alongside those report documents and summaries of your ISP outreach processes up to this point. So with that said, I'll turn it over to John, who will start us off.
Thanks, Reid. And good morning, everyone. And thank you all for adjusting your time for I have a 9 o'clock class I just got out. So I appreciate your flexibility to allow me to join you. And I hope everything is going well with all the counties through the cohort since the last time I saw you. So yeah, as Reid mentioned, I've got some things to share with you, and maybe some of this is kind of refresher as well about some of the mapping things that we've been working on at ISU for you all. I'm going to start by dropping in the chat here. This is the same Google Drive link that I provided back in early March when I last visited with all of you. And so there's some more stuff in here, but I want to make sure you've got that link, and we'll put it in the emails and make sure it gets out in other ways as well. So what I'll do here, let me see if I'll share my screen here so you kind of see what we've got here. So here's the Google Drive folder. Can everybody see that okay on your screen there? Okay, yeah. So we've got some different resources in here. So I've got the presentation you might remember back in March. So that has kind of some of the maybe some of the details about some of the mapping products. Again, if you're curious about what am I looking at, how was this created, that type of thing. So that's there. There's some different reports and things like that. Again, this is if you want to get into the weeds a little bit more. I mentioned when we talked back in March about the Broadband Breakthrough, the Benton report. It's a great kind of show some examples of how some of the counties in the initial cohort utilize some of these tools that I'm about to show you. So so that's in there as well. And then we've got two folders here, the corn soybean estimate maps and the vertical asset map. So let's look at both of those. So we'll start with the corn soybean estimate maps here. So what this is basically, as you might remember, as Reid mentioned, we were talking about sort of the maps that can quantify agricultural production. And so this map. So we have one of these for each of your counties. So for all 7, you will find it in there. Again, just as a refresher, this is sort of the, what if we had great broadband coverage in the county and that allowed farmers to do full-scale precision agriculture? What might we expect in terms of additional yields and dollar amounts? Okay, so that's kind of that map, and so you can kind of use that as a way of sort of projecting into the future of some potential gains that might come in the agricultural sector with improved broadband. And so again, you've got the maps here, and then you've got some of the statistics down here. So Each of the counties, you'll find your map here. It's just kind of an image, and you can download it and certainly use it. However, you can find that of use or of value. I want to point out down here at the very bottom, you'll see there is a PDF. It says Overview of Agricultural Yield Maps. This is kind of a one pager, just some of the basics. What are we looking at here? How was this calculated? Some of that type of stuff. So for example, we base this, we have to have an average price per bushel of corn and soybeans. And so that stuff is referenced there, as well as the study that we use to base the projected yields from. So you might remember we talked about that study where 3.6% gain in corn, 3.8% gain in soybeans. So that's there as well. So again, this is just stuff. I think it's always, when you're using these maps, it's always good to be informed. How were these maps created? What are the limitations? That type of thing. And so I will try to summarize some of that stuff here for you. So that's the first sort of product. Let me pause for just a second. Does anybody have any questions about any of those maps? And if not, of course, you've got my email. Feel free to follow up at any time. The second thing I want to show you then is the vertical assets map. So again, let me just kind of fast forward here. And you may remember we talked about these. So it's an interactive web map, vertical assets, or sort of tall structures. Okay. Grain bins, silos, buildings, those types of things. And so again, this is kind of that idea, the middle mile and identifying these as potential towers that you could leverage in a county. So what I've got here is, if you go into vertical assets maps, again, we have I think this is a 2-pager, a little, user guide and some of the links. As Reid alluded to, with apologies to Lake, McHenry, and Pike, your maps are in progress, and we're going to have those done very soon. But I don't have them for you today. The other 4 counties, we have them in there. You 3 counties, will keep you posted. I've got students that are working very hard on these, and we'll have those within the next week and a half or so for you. And then what I'll do is we'll let you know once those are there, and we'll have your links in here. But what you could basically do is other counties, you could just kind of click on a link, and then it should take you to your vertical assets map here. And then what you also will see in here in this 1-pager is, again, what are we looking at? How is this created? Essentially, these are vertical assets. They're 12 feet or taller. Okay. We try to clean as many of the trees out as we can. You may find some random trees in there, but we try to, as best we can, get rid of as many trees there. We have a little bit of, you can find the height too by clicking. So if you're looking at a vertical asset and you zoom in here, you click, you'll see the mean and the max height there. So what that just means is if you have a roof, if it's just got a flat, roof, the mean and the max are going to be the same. But if you have something like a pitch, like a structure like this, we're giving you what the maximum, like the top point is, and then sort of the mean or the average. So that's kind of what that is. And then otherwise, there's some little tips for how you actually use these. There's some different tools in here that you can use, and I'll just give a quick run through of how you might use this. So we're here in Marshall County. You can change the base map up here. So a lot of times it's it's kind of nice to look at imagery underneath, because you can kind of see what it is you're looking at with some imagery. So as we zoom in here, you can see we got a couple of grain bins here. We've got a building there. If you click on the point, again, you'll see you can get the height in feet of those vertical assets. The other thing that you'll notice as you zoom in here, and if you go, you'll see in the layers here, there's this thing that says parcel boundaries. So this is showing parcels or kind of land ownership as well. So you may say, well, this is kind of interesting. Whose property is this? And you can see it's indicated with the gray line. If you click on the parcel there, it will give you the parcel ID number in here. So you can see there is the APN. And that's what you can use to then trace with your local government, your local county, to figure out who that actual landowner is. So the parcel information is in here. We don't have individual names. We can't put that in there from the data source that we have, but you can do that. The other thing that I find helpful with this is, again, remember we said 12 feet or more. That's a lot of things, a lot of buildings and things like that. But you very well might just be interested in the really tall structures. So you can use this little filter tool here, and you can go in and again, there's instructions for how to use this in that little 2-pager. And I could say, well, let's find structures that are greater than 50 feet. And so you can do a little query here and then watch what happens to the map. When I do that, you'll see I get a lot fewer dots that show up on the map and just, the really tall ones. And Marshall's kind of interesting because you've got obviously a big wind farm out here. And so, you can tell those very clearly. You can kind of see them on the things here. But that's a good way to find, the really tall silos, the water towers, the especially large, kind of structures that you might have in your county. So that's the filter tool there. Other than that, I think that kind of gives a little bit of a summary of things. And again, those steps are kind of outlined, how you can do a filter, and some other, the imagery, the parcel, that type of thing. So again, this document's in there. The other 3 counties here, as I mentioned, you'll have your own links here very soon. And then you can explore and use these, however you see fit in your own county. So I think that's kind of everything that I've got. Does anybody have any questions over the vertical asset maps or anything else? Okay, well, if not, feel free to reach out to me anytime. And again, we'll share the Google Drive link here. And feel free to explore these resources. So thank you all, and Reid, thank you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I'll just highlight that especially the vertical asset map, coupled with your survey results, because we ask on the survey about anyone that might have a structure on their property who is willing to host fixed wireless infrastructure. This map it'll be very easy for you to quickly kind of cross-reference and see the areas where someone might have said they're interested in hosting equipment, and then look on the map and see where that address is located. So it's a huge bonus, especially for a provider that is interested in building in your county and maybe needs one little push. And this would certainly be helpful for a lot of providers. And just to highlight, I did mention at the top, I will collect all of the resources for each county. So what John is providing, what RCG is providing, what Nancy is giving you all, and create specific individual county folders that I will send out to each county. So you don't have to go hunting for each of these resources. We'll send the link to the ISU drive anyway, so you have that right away. But as we collect each individual piece, whenever all of those are ready, I'll send a full folder with all of the assets to each county. But let's keep moving ahead, and I'll toss it over to Nancy.
Thank you. Let's get my slides up and start. Just want to mention, as sort of a bridge from what John was talking about too, of those farms and ag entities. And I just want to see, does everyone hear me? Yeah, I'm seeing some. Okay, thanks, friends. Those that have already taken the survey, agreed to host equipment on their vertical assets, you would be able to have their location and their email from the survey. And so you receive the reports, you receive your data. And so, and then there's going to be a link that I'm going to share for you to sign up for your county survey results review with me, which will be very useful so that we can really talk through what are the different ways you can use the data and then ask questions of the data. There's, only a limited amount of sort of time and ways that we can report on some of the results of the survey. However, there's a lot of like cross tabs we can do, or sort of like just yes or no, asking additional questions of the survey based on what you might want to know. And so I have some of those considerations that I'll be talking about during the presentation as data always helps us ask more questions. And so, we get information, but we also are able to ask more questions and then, take the time with me and discuss. And of course, any program team members that would want to attend as well, to kind of bring everything together and have, those more comprehensive discussions. So I've got availability that, starting tomorrow, I'm not analyzing survey data anymore. Starting tomorrow all the way to end of next week, I put a bunch of availability up for people to get those meetings set up with me. And let me just share my screen here. And you can all let me know that you can see my slides and that you can see the right screen, not the, do you see the full slide?
Looks good, Nancy.
Cool. All right. Just happy to be at the end of the sprint and talking to you all. A lot of thoughts going on in my mind as I'm getting the results from your county surveys, and really glad to share this with you. Just what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to just mention quickly what worked well, what needed improvement. That's in the methods, but also in like what I see from the results, right? So it's not, what worked well in the method, like how we surveyed, but also just in general, and what needs improvement as well, in how well you did distribution and got feedback, and maybe what needs more deep dives. But the counties, I think, did really well, and I'll be highlighting some of the good pros from the work done in the counties, the survey work done in the counties. And so we've got some results, we've got some points of discussion, and some themes I want you to be aware of. I was thinking these were more trends as well, and then some next steps items that you'll need to do. So some pros to this, the counties are able to gauge community sentiment. You should feel confident. You should feel very confident on now knowing your county-wide or community sentiment on current broadband access and adoption and use, because the survey kind of touched on all of those main phases of broadband development. Want to give a shout out to Fulton County. They canvassed all their main communities in their county. And so that had them achieve the highest proportion of their population surveyed, and the geographic spread and the response type spread was really impressive. And Montgomery and Macoupin counties had a radio conversation with me that I think engaged a lot of additional responses, because I had never seen that highest level of yield of responses from the farming and ag entities before. So that was really cool. The counties had a good geographic spread and response type variation. So usually the cohorts, there is a few counties that hit all of the response types: residential, business, public entity, community buildings, those types of things, and then the farming and ag entities. But it's usually several per cohort that will miss something. And really, we only had like 3 or 4 response types among everyone that didn't get covered. And that's just a lot lower than usual. So that was a really good sort of performance distribution. The cluster sampling and canvassing worked well. You'll see some of the results, and I'll be able to explain that here's where I know that cluster sampling and canvassing worked well, and here's where I think it could, help you improve some of the collection. There's a few counties that I wanted to mention something about that. And yeah, now you have a cache of information that you can use for engagement and build out plans, as well as proposals, projects, and programs, all of which can reinforce investment in access, adoption, and use. So a lot of future considerations with this data can kind of open up for you. And then some of the cons. So the public entities were not well surveyed in the following counties. And so, don't know why Montgomery's there twice. There's always going to be an error, folks. That I will change. Let's just see if I can get that changed real quick. That's Macoupin. I think it's Macoupin. Yep, it's Macoupin. Six public entities throughout the county. Montgomery, 3 public entities throughout the county, and Pike, 4 public entities throughout the county. So pretty low, and but that doesn't mean you didn't do a great survey. So we keep going. And so very little input from the farm and ag entities in Lake County. I don't know I think that's also because it's highly populated and there's just not a lot, right? But I wanted to mention that because those are the sort of 4 response type groups that lacked across the cohort, and just amazing in general that it's just limited to that. So not a lot of missing groups in this cohort. Really proud of the counties in this cohort and how that shook out in distribution. The higher population counties had convenience sampling and kind of did not, as a con, couldn't really move on from that convenience sampling phase. And so I think you'll see in some of your results that you might want to try to pinpoint some communities, look at some of your other data that you're getting from RCG, for example, and think about some communities and areas of your county that you're going to want to do some more cluster sampling in. And of course, we're here to, like an extension. You come around anytime this summer you want to do something, an event in that part of your county, and however you want to get that done, I can help you get that done. It would be, I think, a great use of time and energy for you to just knock that down. And so I'm talking to Lake and I'm talking to McHenry. Those are our 2 higher population counties that were in the cohort. We had like a decrease in overall participation in comparison to the previous cohorts, really. In 2024, it was between 1% and 8% of population surveyed. This coincided with some other things that were going on in 2024. We had the bead challenge going on. We had just a lot more feedback in counties there's a lot of more chatter across the state in terms of data collection. And so I don't expect another year like 2024, but 2025, this cohort, not a lot. And I feel like there were a few lower population counties, 20 to 80 more responses would have pushed you over a little bit and got you over that 1% line, which is just a sort of an imaginary line I put there for myself that when I look at the amount of responses we collect. And so there was also a decrease in willingness to host broadband equipment on vertical assets, and I don't know why that is. it's always been around 60 to 80% of those responses say that they would be open to doing that. And this year it was between 40 to 60%. And the only thing I can kind of think of is that we did see more very, very rural locations adopting satellite. And I just wonder if then, because of that, that satisfaction is there with the general situation of broadband access, because of that satellite internet connection, and that maybe they're just checked out, right? And so whereas I think before it was like, gosh, I don't have anything for me, and of course those around me also are in the same boat, and so I think the only thing I want to mention with that is that sometimes that isn't good enough, though. There's still a lot of comments from the survey that talk about how the satellite connection doesn't work during bad weather. And as you all know, we have more, it seems like we have more extreme weather events every year. So that's kind of a discussion to put a pin in for the future. What could improve the results? So just moving from the convenience sampling, the survey is most accessible to those who have the internet, who have the time, who are not necessarily like struggling in a complex poverty environment. And so, and folks that maybe are just more looped into the community or connected into the informational channels in the county. So cluster sampling and canvassing those harder to reach areas where it's harder to bring out some of the other situations would be necessary in some of our counties. And I'd say that just having more responses in general would improve the results, right? But there's definitely a lot that you can take from your reports now. And so it's really, I think, I would like all of you to sign up for like a one-on-one with me, and then I can tell you what I think you should do. Some of you, I think you should do something this summer to enhance the results. And then some of you, I think, are good to go. Okay, and here's how the responses stacked up. Like, for example, a couple more, like 20 more responses in Pike County probably would have given you like 1 point something percent population surveyed. And then I've got this link for the reports and the raw data. I think mainly for the program team, I'm also going to be emailing directly your groups with your individual reports and your raw data files as well. So you'll get that way as well, but wanted to make sure that this is accessible to my program team, so they have the full set of reports and raw data. And so again, in those reports, you're going to have a full coverage map. And then on those coverage maps, whereas before we've just looked at the geographic location and response type, residential, business, public entity, farm entity. Now, in addition to that, you can see a location. If you look at a location, you can see what it is, what ISP they're subscribing to, if they are subscribing to a wired internet connection, for example, with a router. What is the reliability rating that they rated their service at? And then what was the FCC threshold, meaning is it unserved or underserved? You'll see if it is unserved, meaning having lower than 25 by 3, or underserved, having lower than 10 by 20, 100 by 20 megabits per second. And then, so now we're kind of getting into, I wanted to give you responses by ISP for the counties. So most survey respondents in Fulton County had these ISPs that they were subscribed to, and what percentage of those speeds clocked at 100 by 20 or more during the speed tests. And here's the percentages. So like, for example, Xfinity was delivering good speeds most of the time versus MediaCom, which was at 14% of cases had speeds over 100 by 20. And then if you look at the reliability rating, kind of similar hit or miss for all of the ISPs, except for you've got this one ISP that the reliability is really low. And so it's always good to know if someone has like a high rating for speed, is it reliable? Sometimes those are inversely inversely correlated, but not all the time. It's always good to see how they stack up for both. So we've got that, and Lake County similarly, highly, unique in that it's a highly populated county with not a lot of choices. And here's how they stack up. Those speeds really aren't there for AT&T. And that reliability is really hit or miss for Xfinity. So overall, what are your overall great options? None. And so, but then you've got, and then, yeah, I am curious to see what's going to happen with Lake County. And I know that RCG has some good leads for them as well in terms of considerations and strategies. Macoupin County. Yeah, I wanted to give you a bunch of your, you guys have more competition. That's great. And so you've got Connexus that stacks out pretty well with that, as well as a bit of others. So nice to know. And McHenry, similarly, there's your most frequently subscribed to ISPs and how they shake out for the speeds and the reliability. And here's Montgomery County. This is for all of us to see. I think the program team also wants to see this stuff too. You'll get this in your report as well. Pike County. So some things we've got, I know there's been some interesting chatter about how Frontier is really stepping up. I think in some counties, though, like real rural counties, it's still kind of same old, same old. I wanted to just put a few talking points here about those data points that are in your reports that I feel like you should consider when you're talking, maybe in your proposal narrative, you're talking about the potential for an increase in economic activity or economic diversification. You'd want to consider these use frequencies, like what do people hope to use their internet connection for in the future? They are saying that they would use it for workforce training, that they would use it to operate a home business, or that they would use it for remote work. And that's just always good to take a look at those and be able to say, we did this survey, we've listened to residents in our county, and here's what they're saying. This percentage are saying that this is what they would use better connectivity for. And that you can, know that it directly impacts business expansion, retention. It impacts that workforce quality, for future business investment or for future employment, and, household income. Remote work and access to those remote work jobs can impact household income in the counties. Here's the farms willing to host the broadband equipment. Most types of precision ag tech are not in current use, with an average of 30%, give or take, up to half in some of the counties that say they plan to use certain precision ag tech in the future. And the breakdown is there in your reports on, current and hoping to use certain types of precision ag tech. And then, of course, the willing to host. So we had some pretty good ag responses for all these counties. Lake and Marshall didn't get farm responses, so they're not on this chart, but you see, anywhere between 50 to 60 over, a little over 60% are willing to host broadband equipment on their vertical assets. And so this is the one that I think everyone's been waiting to look at. Again, we've got the higher counties. I was trying to put an asterisk by the 41 and 55%. I feel like Lake and McHenry counties having such a high population and such a low response rate just never really moved beyond the convenience sampling and things that are the respondents who had just the most easiest access to the survey. I feel like if you could look at some of those pockets in the county or communities in the county that would have been good to include, and you'll see your map and the coverage information for that, so you could brainstorm a little bit on any sort of additional ways to show what the situation is with unserved and underserved. But yeah, these are high percentages. It is just, things aren't working. Internet is not doing what it's supposed to be doing in the counties. It's always in the 70s, 80s% in these rural counties still. And that the survey is, what we do is we say, what's your access at at your location? And they have to indicate if they have access to wired internet. And so they do that, and then that's the pool of speed tests that I'm looking at when I calculate the thresholds, the FCC thresholds. I'm also looking at if they said, yes, I'm connected to that wired internet at my location. So I'm at my address and I am connected to it. And then they verify one more time that they're connected right before the speed test. And then of course, even if they said all those, there's still in the data, there might be a blank still. If it's blank, obviously that's going to get thrown out so that it doesn't say that it was under that threshold, but it just wasn't taken. So there's like 4 points of quality assurance before looking at that pool of responses that took speed tests that are getting calculated into these thresholds of being unserved, under 25 by 3 megabits per second, or underserved, which is, I'm just saying that it's between 25 by 3 and 100 by 2. So we're not double counting there. And then, of course, anything under 100 by 20, what's that percentage, that higher percentage there, everything that's under it. So there's that. Common themes: limited choice and monopoly concerns, dissatisfaction with existing wired options, mixed experiences with wireless. Okay, this is across all the counties. So I know some ISPs were called out, but this is across the counties, these common themes from the comments in the survey, where people could write out additional information and detail about their broadband access adoption and use. And so great, again, people are happy that satellite exists, satellite connectivity exists, but it's not affordable. And then the reliability has issues sometimes. And we don't have that big conversation around telehealth yet, but that latency is always going to be an issue. The high costs and affordability in general, and just people talking about why it's so important, which is wonderful. And then the weather-related issues, people talked a lot about that. So this is common themes that existed in all of the comments in all of the county surveys. And then here's my next steps. So I'm gonna put a link. I'll be emailing you with the link. You'll get the link in the slide, of course, that I want you to sign up to meet with me about your specific report. Just some ideas around engaging business districts more. I think that whole idea of open Wi-Fi or public Wi-Fi is really something that rural areas should always consider. And You're going to want to use your raw data for partnerships and for engagement, and future projects around use and closing the digital divide as well. And your data on what respondents hope to use better connectivity for in the future. Those can be future programs in your county, digital literacy programs, etc. And of course, you're going to want to contact me here. I'm still at my desk here this summer. Give me a call. And if you have an idea of what you might want to do with this survey, maybe you don't want to do more surveying per se, but you want to do like a focus group, and I can help you get a focus group set up. So let's try to do some of those activities if you want to, and you can contact me. And then here's just, my thank you slide. And hopefully I didn't burn into anyone else's time. And I'll hand it back to the group and see if there's questions or if we move on to my other colleagues here. Thanks.
Looks like Anita has her hand raised, maybe has a question.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Nancy. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hello. You're on my hand. So I was trying my best to hold on to this question because it was like 3-4 slides ago.
Oh, sure.
And,
You want me to?
No, no, no. No, it's cool. So the slide that talked about the ISPs that provided 100 over 20 speeds and but whatever percentage of reliability. I was just curious, were the reliability question, was that given to people who are certified, or they know they have 100 over 20, or is it the reliability just overall for the ISP? Does that make
Overall
sense?
for the ISP.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So looking at how people felt their local, their wired connection, and those who subscribed to that ISP, how reliable they felt it was. And it was a 5-point Likert question for, really not satisfied to very satisfied. And so that was, they had an affordability, reliability, and speed question for satisfaction. These are like satisfaction levels that they felt. And so everybody self-reports on that. And people have different levels of like tolerance and how they might feel. So if, that's something to consider when you look at the satisfaction ratings that everyone, I might be coming back from the Peace Corps and I'm like, if you guys have electricity, I will work for you, but then, at some other point, I'm like super, bougie about all my amenities these days. So it's like satisfaction is, that's the limitation, I think, on the satisfaction.
Okay, thanks so much. That's what I was just curious about. Was it
Yeah.
just for people that got 120, or is it just from everybody? So it sounds like you said everybody, regardless of the speeds they subscribe to, they asked the question about reliability. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, and then this discussion is just a very broad discussion in general today that I could offer you. I just feel like those, county level meetings with me and any other program team members would be really useful for you. And like, let's kind of dive in and look at the primary data from the surveys. And then you've got a lot of great secondary data now from RCG, ISU, et cetera. And wouldn't it be great to just have a meeting this coming week to have like an individual discussion about your county? So today was a little bit more broad. So
really appreciate the takeaways. You sit with that each survey first, and pour so much into analyzing it. So your overall assessment of the takeaways and themes are really, it's interesting, and appreciate you pulling that together.
Thank
Um,
you. Yep. There's more to say and I could talk you to death. So, but that's it for today.
Yeah, with that, I'll hand it over to Tom, I think, right?
Yep. Thanks, Reid.
Sounds good.
So what we're going to do today is Andrea is going to touch on the PDFs that we provided just to remind everybody what they are and how they work. Kim's then going to give us an update on the ISP outreach efforts. And then Sean is going to review kind of the way we're approaching gap analysis, which is a little different just based on kind of the landscape of what's left in the state of Illinois to address. So Andrea?
Hi, everyone. So most of you should have received the Zoomable PDFs in I'm screen sharing the wrong screen. Jeez, oh man. Every time. There we go. Everyone should have received these from Reid. A couple folks that needed Outlook links, I sent individual Outlook links of these in the beginning, and Reid will be making sure they're in the folder so you can access them. So inside the folder, there's 3 documents that are important. One is how to use a PDF with layers. That's it's called Layered PDF Instructions, which just gives you the small cues on what to click on to open up the map layers. You also have a key that has all of the color coding for every layer that's included inside that layered PDF. And finally, everyone has a folder that looks like a file that looks like this. They're very large files, so you can print them big for working documents, or you can share them and use them. Try not to email them directly. Use a link because I think they're about 40 megabytes, most of them, and they will not go through your email. This here is your layered menu. So you'll just click on this as a reminder and open the caret where it says map frame. And this is everything that we've included for you. So when Sean goes through his presentation next, all of the layers that he's talking about are included in this. So you can turn them off and on to see if you have award blackout areas, what the project areas have been awarded by the state of Illinois, and most importantly, you can also see all the speed testing and the FCC claimed speeds on here as you're working with your teams in your office. I think another thing that people appreciate is these do zoom in so you can see neighborhoods and where there might be BEAD eligibility and where there are project areas that have been outlined by the state of Illinois. If you have any questions about any of this or need anything, you can email me directly at Andrea@Reid Consulting Group. And all of these are accessible in the folders. Does anyone have any questions before I turn it over to Kim for a refresh? No? Okay. Kim, over to you.
I might have a quick question.
Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you. Just to clarify or verify that as we look at our survey responses, I know we respect anonymity, but is it automatically kind of overlaid in some visual for us to see if our survey responses in terms of how they define their service overlap with the BEAD areas that were previously identified?
That's a good question. We have not plotted survey responses. We created those before surveys were done. Nancy, what do we get in terms of location information on the surveys?
Reported address, and they were able to say if they were at that address when they were taking the survey as well, verify that. There are latitude, longitude coordinates there too. And then the UCLA. So the speed tests were done through UCLA. So, I mean,
the only way we can tell if they're in a PAU would be to do the GIS analysis. The PAU is the project area units that the state of Illinois established. And there are a lot of other funding. There's RDOF funding, things like that. So I think the question is, can we tell whether the location of the survey taker, whether they see a high sunrise, a broadband sunrise coming based on something that's been funded or is about to be funded, or whether they're out in one of those gaps. Is that right, Heather?
That is well put. Yes.
Well, I think we should take those survey results and see what it looks like. Sean, if you want to work with Nancy to get those, I think it'd be really interesting to plot those. Good point, Heather.
Yeah, really good point, Heather. And I've definitely asked myself the same question of like, oh, it would be great to put this as a layer on some of the other existing data that's there. So, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
I will just add that we fed in these survey speed test results into the state map before I think Alexis might be able to like verify that, but like working with Shubika since 2021 as well, handing over that information and having letting her have access to the raw speed data from the surveys in the past has helped kind of improve what that Illinois broadband map data had. So again, I can verify to see to what extent that is possible for this next wave of speed data that was collected in the surveys.
And I saw a conversation or a comment earlier about not being able to use Google Drive. I think if you just let Reid know, he can arrange to make sure that you can gain access through, some other file sharing solution.
100%. Yep, I can get it to you in any way you need it.
All right, I think we're to Kim. Are there more questions on the PDF, the Zoomable PDF?
I think, Hillary had a question or just clarification in the comments. I think, Hillary, the use would be to kind of cross-reference the survey responses with the speed test data. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, the speed test data and the funded areas data. So, if someone is in an area that was funded by the state of Illinois a couple of years ago, but the deployment hasn't happened there yet, but that's very different than someone who's sitting in an area that has not been funded.
Right.
Can we offer them hope? Or, is the deployment already over and they still have terrible service? It's a good set of questions there.
And the other question, the clarification Hillary had on there, yes, with the bead hexes, not every location inside that hex is necessarily going to be eligible. But there's a good chance that if somebody bids and wins and deploys bead, they're not going to give up offering service to those other locations. Like they'll have to pass them anyway to reach those eligible locations. Not guaranteed, but it's probable.
Right. Thank you. We're definitely clarifying that for folks. A lot of people are seeing the hexes and saying, well, my house is a hex, so I'm eligible. We say, oh, unless you are a point in that hex.
Right.
So we're just making sure that people are clear on that distinction. The hexes are invisible. They are not literal.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, I think we're moving on to Kim.
Great. Thank you. I'm trying to, can you all see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding. So county outreach, kind of the ISP outreach for the counties, just a little quick overview. We started with each county had a situational analysis meeting with the RCG team. And in that, one of the reasons that was important for ISP outreach is because we wanted to hear from you all who you've been talking to, who's currently in your county, who's doing things well, who's maybe not doing things well. what services are available, what services. So we got a lot of great input from that. And then we started looking at what the data says. A copy of the review of the data was given to all the counties towards the end of March. And then on April 1st, we started outreach. Most of the outreach was conducted over email, just because we're trying to be aware of everybody's time and not trying to have all of the county teams need to meet every week just to make phone calls or have Zoom meetings. We reached out to 18 different ISPs across the counties, which was really considerable. At least 4 ISPs were identified and recommended for each county. You all should have received the last update yesterday. If you did not receive it, it went to your county team lead. So feel free to leave your address, your email address in the chat for me, and I can send that on, or just reach out to your county team lead and you can get a copy of that. When it was possible and when we thought there was some value to it, we did set up Zoom meetings between the county teams and some ISPs, and we had some really good meetings. One of the things we found, though, is that the timing is a massive challenge, and there's really nothing anybody can do about it. You know, before we started the cohort, the Illinois Office of Broadband had opened up Wave 1, and they're currently in the deconfliction process, so there's no solid publicly available answers yet. And the speculation is that Wave 2 will start later in the spring. I will say that there's a May 20th webinar that has been announced as a quote unquote kickoff for Wave 2. Anybody from Illinois Office of Broadband that wants to chime in with any more information on Wave 2? Tom, I think you're trying, yeah.
You throw in what potential changes might happen to the program coming out of DC, and the uncertainty level goes up even further.
Sure. One of the other things we heard from some of the ISPs is that some of the Wave 1 requirements were difficult in some areas for them, especially when we were talking with some of the smaller ISPs. One of the Wave 1 requirements that was included was the idea of 10% of the locations in an application needed to be considered hard to serve. And there were smaller ISPs who had PAUs they were interested in, but those PAUs didn't necessarily include the 10%, that 10% threshold that they needed. So they didn't feel like their application was going to stand up in Wave 1. One of the pieces of good news is that in Wave 2, that 10% hard to serve, at least as of this point, again, as Tom mentions, the ever-changing nature of what's coming out of DC for all federal programs means that the Illinois Office of Broadband is continuing to have to shift and make sure that they are compliant with what they're hearing from DC. And so that means that we absolutely should anticipate that everyone else is going to have to be flexible in terms of what changes may come. Which is a really difficult thing to do. But it's just the nature of, I think everybody understands, it's the nature of what is happening in the Capitol at this point. One other thing that we found in a lot of our initial meetings, folks talked about having had outreach from a group called Strategic Management. And some of us were really confused about who that was, what the intent was. There was sort of this almost a letter writing campaign from Strategic Management to earn letters of support. And some folks didn't do that because they didn't really understand. Some folks did do that, just having some faith, that they could help their constituents. And what we found was I think I speak for the RCG team. I think I speak for most of the cohort leadership. We were really impressed with what Strategic Management is and is trying to do. They are mostly made up of what would be considered smaller ISPs, many of which started in the telecommunication space 100 years ago as local telephone providers. They have these very small service areas that they have worked out from to build. And when They have been previously awarded state grants or federal grants. They've done what they've said that they were going to do. And the service is pretty good. So if you have been in contact with any of these groups that are listed, this is what we understand the makeup of strategic management to be. I will add, because I know Tom will want me to, our one criticism is their name. Their name their name is very misleading or very confusing. But from our team to you all, if strategic management is an opportunity for a conversation about broadband in your county, we highly recommend that you have the conversation. It may not be an answer, but we highly recommend the conversation because we think that they are really earnest in what they're doing and that their track record is that they have said they have done what they have promised to do.
Yeah, and so they created strategic management as a bidding entity for BEAD. So that's why they created it. None of these companies really had the capacity on their own to participate. So that's why they pooled their resources to create this company. Yeah, unfortunate choice of names because it doesn't really communicate anything to you.
Right.
But that's what they're about. And yeah, I agree with Kim. We're really impressed with the companies and their track record.
Yeah, I think the name too, I think Matt mentioned that they were trying to get through registering the company in 6 different states. So they also had to find a name that wasn't already registered in any of the 6 different states. So we appreciate the situation that they were in. But
it's surprising to me that strategic management wasn't taken in any of those 6 states.
It is kind of surprising. It is kind of surprising. If anything that I just presented is news to you, probably you haven't been in contact with your county lead. So try that avenue first. Second avenue is please feel free, as Andrea mentioned, on the Reid team, our emails are all pretty easy. I'm Kim at reidconsultinggroup.com. Please feel free to reach out. It's been really good so far, so hopefully we can continue to make some strides. And then I think if there's no questions,
Kim. Yeah, any questions on the ISP outreach? Okay, I'll turn it over to Sean, talk about gap analysis.
All right, thanks, Tom. Get my slideshow and screen share going here. Give me a moment. Okay, looks like it should be coming through to you all at this point. So we talked about gap analysis during the situational assessment meetings that we held with each county. So I wanted to kind of come back and revisit that in a little more detail to explain to you what we're doing and what the point is. Why are we doing this? Because the Illinois Office of Broadband has done a really good job of identifying underserved areas and reaching them. And if you look at this map here, all of these black areas are either federal or state awards that already exist, and then all of the blue areas are BEAD related. So you've got a lot of coverage there. But a couple of caveats. Number one, a lot of those federal awards, some of these blacked out areas are for fixed wireless. Sometimes that's an okay solution, but it's probably not a great solution for 30 years down the road. And there are some small areas that are going to end up still needing help after BEAD just because of the way the NTIA maps were handled. And speed test data kind of backs this up. It shows that there are areas of need that are not inside areas that will receive funding, or there are places where the coverage has been overstated. So we wanted to be able to quantify for that for you all. The way we do this is we combine layers. So we take the locations, and then on top of them, we put the existing funding, we put the BEAD eligibility, we put FCC claims, we put speed test ratings, and then we look at that big sandwich and say, okay, where are there hexes that still contain unfunded and underserved locations? And then once you've got all those hexes identified, we'll calculate how many miles of roads are there in those hexes, how many locations are in there, and what's the density there. And then we use that to create some estimates for what we think it would cost to deploy fiber. So like in this just little snippet of a location here, the green hexes are places that are showing up as served. The blue hexes are those kind of shorthand hexes for where bead locations are. There might be a, like here, there's a location peeking out from under there. When we do our analysis, we'll actually do the locations. But then all these red hexes are places that are showing up as un or underserved. Black dots already have funding, so you can see the gaps in this case. I've got the little green circles around them. So all of these light blue dots are places that are in locations that we're identifying as not having any viable wired service, and not having any funding either. So I'm going to run through an more detailed example of how we do this. I just grabbed a portion of Pike County. I could have grabbed one from pretty much any county. They're all but this had a good representative sample that we have. So starting out, all of these little blue dots, or teal if you have a wider color palette, those are all the locations in this part of the county. You can see you got a lot of density here on Pittsfield, and then you get on the rural area, not a whole lot of density.
And just a reminder, these are the FCC designated broadband serviceable locations.
Yes, thank you, Tom. So now we're going to put existing awards on top of it. These could be state, these could be federal. I just make them all black so that it doesn't get too visually busy. So you can see it covers up a number of those locations that are covered by existing awards. So they should eventually receive some form of service, whatever that award was for. So then I'm going to overlay the BEAD project area units from the state. And again, as we mentioned right before this, these aren't the actual, inside of these, there might be some locations inside of these. If you notice, there's all these locations here when you overlay the blue hexes. Some of those locations may be BEAD eligible, some of them may not be. I just didn't want to have a bazillion points in this view because it gets really visually busy. But when we actually do the analysis where the gaps are, we'll be looking at the actual locations. So then we put down the provider's coverage for wired service. So I simplify the colors for this. Again, the blue is still the BEAD areas. Anything that's green, someone is claiming wired service that's at least 100 by 20. Anything that's red is below 120. And I don't bother to distinguish for this view between whether it's underserved or unserved. It's just either way, it would be eligible for funding. And again, we still have, on top of this, we still have the black dots that show where funding already exists. So all these black dots that are in red areas here, yes, they're currently reporting as needing service, but there is a funding program that has provided something to bring service to them. The ones we care about in this view are the blue dots that are in red areas. Those are all the places that are gaps based on wired service.
And we stuck with wired service because if you look at fixed wireless, it basically erases all need.
Almost all need, yeah. Yeah, there are a couple of counties where there were maybe 5 or 6 locations that still showed up as having need after you've had the fixed wireless claims. And there's an ongoing debate whether fixed wireless should count or not, but because it does in the state for this, that's why we wanted to provide this supplemental analysis to show you if you discount the fixed wireless, this is what you're looking at, were areas that don't have funding yet. So then we throw the speed tests in the mix. You see it doesn't change a whole lot. You'll notice that up here around the airport, some of that is testing pretty poorly, even though it's claimed as being served. And you got a couple of locations down here in rural areas that actually are testing much better than what the providers are claiming. So at this point, this is what we would use to run our calculations to grab all the hexes that have any locations that are still the light blue. And once we've done that, like I said, we'll do it at the location level. And depending on the county you're in, your gaps are going to look different. I've got McHenry showing here. McHenry, it's kind of like somebody put up a map of the county and then hit it with a shotgun. There really aren't any big contiguous gap areas. I mean, you got a handful of hexes here that run together. over in some of the areas around Harvard, but in a lot of places, especially the eastern part of the county where there's more population density, it's just onesie twosies. Same thing down here in the southwest portion. So what we were doing for a county like McHenry is we basically divide it up into approximate quadrants, sort of based on where we see break lines between the gap areas, and then we calculate for each of the quadrants. We'll also do a calculation for the whole county. So you'll be able to say, if you're doing a presentation or talking to somebody for planning, you can say for the entire county, if we wanted to reach every location that's not going to get funding through BEAD or another program, here's how much it would cost. And then you could zoom it in on just like if you were talking about the area around Marengo, you could just look at the numbers for this quadrant. Other counties, the gaps are a little more concentrated. We're looking at Fulton here. So these little green outlines are the ones that I drew to kind of identify. You can see where most of the gaps actually have a more contiguous. This one, the one area around Lewistown is probably the one with the least contiguous areas. You'll see a lot of served areas, and BEAD areas would have to be excluded. But down in here, you got much bigger swaths. So it would make more sense to talk about these areas. Like, it wouldn't make sense to talk about this quadrant up here because there basically are no gaps when you include all of the funding programs. But down here, it makes more sense to talk about these as individual areas, rather than just saying, well, in this quadrant, here's what we have. If it makes more sense to you all to do quadrants, I can do that for you all. If you're in a county where I'm drawing polygons like this, can also refine those things based on your input. So if I, you all will get to see what the gap areas look like. And if you say, well, let's include, like, let's look at both the areas that surround Vermont and I can't read the town's name because there's things on top of it, but if you wanted to draw a space here and say, let's look at these two gap areas together, we could do that. This isn't set in stone. I just wanted to show you how we're thinking and how we put these together so that you know what's coming. If you have any questions about this, or Tom, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, from a federal perspective, fixed wireless counts as broadband. In the state I live in Ohio, our state law says fixed wireless is not broadband, does not count. And given the terrain in much of Illinois, fixed wireless can actually be fairly effective, but it's still going to be limited on the speed. Same thing with the satellite. It can only provide so much capacity. That's why we still kind of advocate for wired solutions, which if you're building anything today, that's going to be fiber optics. That if you look at the needs of 2055, whether it's a farmer or somebody, a city dweller who's doing remote work, the capacity needs are going to continue to escalate. That a lot of places now, like in my home, I can subscribe to 2 gigabit fiber service, or I can subscribe to 1 gigabit coaxial cable service. There's a fixed wireless provider here as well. I've got choices, and I should have choices. And we want that same sort of capability in these rural areas. To say that 100 by 20 is enough speed today, it might be. But 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it isn't. It's not going to be. And so that's why we keep focusing on these wired services, is we're trying to think, 3 decades in the future, because infrastructure takes a long time to build, and that infrastructure should last for a long time in terms of meeting the needs of the people in the area. My general rule of thumb is, if there's grid power, if there's a power company serving a location, then we can afford to put fiber there as a country. I just hate to see people marginalized in the long term. But that's just our philosophy. We're not saying that that's the only right answer. That's just the way that we look at it. Any questions on what Sean's doing, or any preferences about how you think the analysis would be most helpful to you? I think everybody's ready for a break. It's back to you, Reid.
All right. Well, appreciate everyone for hanging in and listening to all of this. It was definitely a lot of information thrown at you, and it'll take some time, I think, for everyone to kind of thumb through it and understand it. So as questions arise, and then, we're sure that they will, please reach out to, whoever is best, or if you're not sure, where the question should be directed to, just send it on to me, and I'll help you out and get the answer for you. So as I said, these things will become kind of finished over the next couple weeks. And so you'll have access to everything that's ready today. That'll come in the follow-up. So all the slides, and I think Nancy's sending off the survey reports, everything that's completed and ready for your eyes, that'll come to you today, but not necessarily in a super neat folder like I'm going to provide when everything is done. So rest assured, once all of the information is complete, all the analysis is done, I will combine all of that into a single folder for each county. That way it's easy for you all to store and distribute amongst yourselves and to any prospective partners that you're working with, just so nothing gets lost. But if you're wanting something specific right now and want to know how to access it, let us know and we'll do our best to get you access to that information. So with that, I think we're pretty much done. The only kind of housekeeping note, all of the team leaders this morning received a form from me that we'd like you to fill out, as at your earliest convenience, really just a little questionnaire on your process going through the program that will help Adrienne and I create a presentation for next week in combination with all of the data that we've gone through today. We're putting together some final thoughts and reflections on all of your efforts in the program. So that form went out to each team point of contact. So please get that back to me. I said by Monday at the latest. So we have enough time to create the presentation for Wednesday. So if you want a few days to look through the survey results, stuff like that, that's completely understandable. And yeah, really, it shouldn't take you long, just a few, 7 questions, a few sentences on each. And if you can't answer all 7, that's completely cool. Heather asks, that's a great question, Heather. If one born in Washington were the primary decision makers on future of BEAD that you'd want to talk to, 100% your legislators is one of the first, most actionable ways that you should be thinking about it, because the Speed for BEAD Act is active legislation that would drive a lot of changes to the program and cause a lot of delays, and force states to spend up to maybe 2 years to get this money out the door that already 3 years has been invested in. Tom, were you gonna add?
You've got it, Reid. I think your legislative representatives are the way to go.
Yeah, so voice your support for, or at least the way that what we think is best is leave it up to the states. There are some improvements that we're generally in favor of that the program could use, but there's no need for additional legislation. Maybe some, NTIA could add some waivers that states could adopt if they wanted to, but making the states adopt top-down changes at this stage is just going to create more delays and cause an amazing amount of effort to be expended that doesn't need to be. That's already, the effort has already been taken at the states to get many of the states are ready to start sending money out the door right now. So
Yeah, I talked to a number of broadband leaders who said they just wish it was a block grant to the states.
Right.
And that works great in states like Illinois, where you have an excellent broadband office. But we're where we are. It's really hard to say what's going to come out of the administration right now. They do have a new NTI head. I don't think she's been confirmed yet. Ariel Roth.
No, she's not.
She's up for Senate confirmation. But I believe she's also out on maternity leave right now. But there is someone who does have decision-making authority at NTIA until Ariel takes over. So what I'm hearing is mid-May. I don't know if Robbie or anybody else has feedback, that I'm hearing mid-May, maybe when we get clarification on what's going to change in BEAD. And Robbie also posted a letter or a news item about a letter sent from legislators to NTIA.
Yeah, the best that I have is April 22nd. In that link that Reid sent, they said 90 days basically from April 22nd, but we'll see.
Yeah, I've heard mid-May as well, or that we're gonna hear something, but yeah. And if you're interested on this topic more, we're covering, that's kind of a focus right now. Benton is trying to do as much coverage on what the potential changes are, and the impact that they'll have on states. So keep an eye out on our headlines, and if you have any questions, let me know, and we'll love to clarify or talk more.
And to be fair, there are some changes I would love to see happen.
Right.
But without erasing all the work that's happened.
Exactly. Well, like I said, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to the Broadband Breakthrough team for providing the information and presenting it to everyone. Like I said, next week is the final meeting on the 7th. So that will be at our normal time of 9 a.m. and look forward to seeing you all there.
And as Reid's pointed out, some of the deliverables will come in will lag a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but we're not going to stop.
You will get, yep, you'll get more information as time goes on. So we'll stop meeting every week, but very much still in your corner. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Hey, Reid, if you just want to stay on for a second.
Yeah, please. I saw your emails.
What's that?
I saw your email.